This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to week 3 of professional practice. This week we're going to dig down deep into ethics. So I want to talk a little bit about what ethics are and what that means to you as a designer and what are your responsibilities. So we want to think about how a professional designer knows the client's business and their design standards inside and out. And as a designer, it is required of you to always act within their best interest. It's your personal responsibility. Um, you also want to think about how ethically you shouldn't work on two jobs simultaneously that may conflict with each other. For example, I work for Full Sail, so I can't be teaching at another university down the street. That just would be a conflict. So you want to think about how certain clients could be in competition with one another. So you don't want to, cross that ethical boundary of, stepping on each other's toes. So we also want to think about how the designer will always treat the work that they are working on for a client with the complete knowledge of the client's intentions, the production methods, the business organization. It's all confidential. You're not supposed to go out and reveal to the world or to the competition specifically what's going on when you do a job for a specific type of business or product or a service or a nonprofit organization. So when you work for a client, what goes on in their business is their business and you are a part of that business. So it's your ethical responsibility not to reveal their business trade. So you're going to think about too how a designer who accepts instructions from a client, we talked a little bit about this last week, that the instructions you're giving are on the up and up. You don't want to take on a job that maybe is a violation of your own personal ethics. For example, I won't work for any company, do any design work or writing work for them if I know they're harming the environment in any way. That goes against my personal ethics, so I just turn down work unless it meets my ethical standards. And remember, last week we talked about how it's important that you don't share work from one client to another or use other images. Even if a client says, I want you to use this image I found on the internet, it is your responsibility to inform that client that there are copyright infringement laws. So y'all did really good about that on the discussion board last week. So this week we're going to go a little further and we're going to talk about finalizing our experience maps, and I'm going to go over the discussion board. So this week, as usual, we have the Wednesday, Friday, Sunday deadlines. And this week we're talking about ethics as a designer and what that will involve. So everything you need here for the discussion board is in the assignment. So make sure you're reading the PDF that is attached at the bottom for the resource. If the link up here doesn't work, always look down at the bottom. There's usually a copy of it attached. This is 10% of your grade, so I just want to remind you that the deadlines matter because that will take away from your final grade. So what you're talking about this week is the ethical and moral issues in the practice of media design, and you're going back to the research paper that you finished up last week, and you're going to talk about the connections that you made between professional practice and business expectations for a professional media designer that were in the AIGA publication. Then you're going to talk about how these issues that you discovered when you were working on your research paper, how they could have been avoided by following those AIGA guidelines. Then I want you to think about the 3 top AIGA guidelines that stood out to you as the most important and the ones that you're going to take away from the course. So remember, you need to quote from your materials and you need to bring in an outside source. So you use some outside sources, I hope, in your research papers, which will be graded later this week. So then come back on Friday after you get your initial post in by Wednesday and respond to a classmate that has not been responded to, and bring some additional information to support their connection to their research and the standards from the AIGA booklet, and cite your sources. And you want to think about what judgment you would make about the persuasiveness of your classmates' statements and explain how they are being persuasive. How did they use their research to back up their claims? Think about that. Then I want you to prioritize the 3 guidelines from the AIG booklet that your classmate identified as the most important, and explain those as well. Then Sunday, come back and do your final post and just discuss what you learned from this discussion assignment and what you will take forward with you as a media designer. So business and ethics as a designer are really important. So please take this discussion board seriously. Okay, so again, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday deadlines. Okay, now let's talk about the experience map. The experience maps that I saw this morning were really good. They are on the road to being really fun, discoverable experience maps. I hope you discovered something as you were putting together and reflecting back on your journey. So I may have challenged some of you to come up with a theme. This one that's on the screen right now is, I think, a spaceship theme, or a kayak. I think it's a kayak. It's a kayak. So, you know, when you're running the rapids, it can be a little up and down. Here's a really good experience map. I think I showed this one in week 1, but I thought this was interesting because it looks like there's a fingerprint. So the actual journey is revealed in this fingerprint, the ups and the downs with the call outs on there. And instead of, you know, boxing out everything, they wrote it in paragraph form, but used call outs for each individual subject of thinking, feeling, and doing. I thought this one was fun because it took on a sailing or a nautical theme, and if you follow the sails, you can see the journey that the student went on, and they were very explicit in what they were thinking and feeling and doing for each of the 3 semesters. So she's someone that likes the water and the ocean and sailing, so she used that. Another theme that I found interesting was this student who created this image that's back here. These are all the textbooks that he used during the Media Design MFA program. And the coffee cups from Starbucks that are scattered all over the desktop kind of represent his journey. So if you follow this blue, the ups and downs that went along with his journey. So I thought that was really interesting that he took the theme a step further and made it really personal and created his own image. So that's always a way to go. This one was a struggle to get to, I'll tell you. The student came to me and she was like, I'm not sure what to do with the map, and she had it kind of laid out the way it was in the textbook. And I'm like, well, what was it about your journey? What was it that motivated you? What was that was frightening you? What was challenging to you? So she said, well, when I first started, it felt like I had this really long road in front of me and that I would never get past the mountains that were standing in my way. And I said, well, there's your theme. You just figured it out. And she was like, oh my God, you're right. So she went back in and she created this image of her standing at the beginning of this road and talking about how she was going to, you know, get through everything. And her journey is signified by the mountains above. This one used emoticons, so Jamal decided that he was going to use different emotions to reveal his thinking and feeling and doing for the month. So he got into what he was thinking about in text along with what he was doing, but then he used the emoticons with a really cool legend over here on the right that talks about, you know, which classes where he was kind of neutral about, which ones he liked, which ones kind of freaked him out, and then he got neutral, then he got happy, and then suddenly he was done. So you can see the ups and downs of his journey here with some call outs as well. This one kind of took the traditional nautical map, but like that old-fashioned kind that maybe the explorers used back in the 1500s, or that the pirates maybe used. So he used the journey across the ocean to talk about his journey of feeling, you know, getting started and feeling confident, then all of a sudden taking a plunge. I think that was probably around month 3 or 4, and then worked his way up until he got to some smooth sailing. And so everybody, if you've noticed, there's something beyond the theme in all these maps, is that it wasn't a straight line. Nobody. I've rarely seen a straight line from a student. So the one that came the closest was this one. She was using these hand signals and icons to represent her journey. But it too, even though it was kind of steady at the beginning, she hit her low point in 6 and then she got back on track. Then something happened in month 9 and she was just like really excited. And then things kind of evened out. Then the thesis kind of made her a little crazy. And then she got to graduation and she was excited. Okay, this last one I'm going to show you, I think this one's just fun. First of all, it's backwards, so it starts at the bottom and works its way up to the top. So this student had just moved to Idaho and was using what happened through her journey through MD-MFA and tied it into her new culture that she discovered in Idaho. She's an outdoors person, so going up a trail through mountains and streams and valleys and maybe avalanches and seeing some moose along the way were part of her journey. So she talked about them here. So I thought that one was just really creative. So really, that's all you're working on this week. You're going to give some feedback to your classmates by Wednesday. So go in and check out their experience map first drafts, their PDFs, or they're posted in the window, and give some reply, some feedback. Then don't forget that your initial post is due on Wednesday. Your apply post is due on Friday. And then you want to have your final experience map and your final discussion board post on Sunday. So that was at the top of the page here. Okay, so experience map is going to be finalized with its theme. Double check all the text. If you're working in InDesign or Illustrator, it does not spell check. You have to take the text into the story editor. So go over your text with a fine-tooth comb. I don't want to see any typos in the maps. Have fun with the theme. That's really important. You saw a couple of different ways you could go. Think about what's important to you and what would represent you and your personality, and let that shine through. Okay, so if you have any questions about anything I covered for week 3, just reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. Staying in contact with me is your best bet for finishing up on a high note. We have one more week after this, and then you're graduating. You're going to graduate with your MFA in Media Design in less than 2 weeks. So let's finish up with a bang, okay? Reach out if you need anything. You have my contact information. Thanks.